All right. Our part one is sexual harassment background. One team member specifically, please give us the background on sexual harassment law.
Well, from what I
Okay,
was
well, I don't really
reading,
want to talk over. Oh, go ahead.
sorry, I didn't mean. Did you have something to say? I didn't mean to cut you off. Okay, I guess I'll go. Over the years, I'm trying to scroll at the beginning of this article. It started back in 1964 with Title VII, and that was essentially there just to outlaw discrimination of employment, specifically with like race, color, religion, sex, national origin. But then between the mid 70s and mid 80s, it started to kind of take an evolution upon itself to where it started to incorporate more of a sexual harassment was kind of adopted into Title VII, more parameters to it. Talks about the kind of difference between the state law and federal law. So that was kind of, hopefully that really starts the conversation.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Spencer. And let's define, Christy, can you define what sexual harassment is for us?
Yeah. Defining sexual harassment is, it was kind of keeping, how do we explain that? So there was no discrimination across the board on sexes due to being a female or male or what was going on in the workplace. It came about when there was a lot of sexual, like when women came into the workforce is what came in more when sexual harassment came about. I'm trying to find where I found it in the article that described it really well. Hold on.
Page 2.
Something unwelcomed is a big
I know, that's
word.
what I was trying to find it. Where is it?
It's sexual advances.
Right. And where is it?
Requests for sexual favors, or
yeah,
can be verbal or physical.
Here we go. While many cases of sexual harassment continue to involve unwanted sexual advances, it's important to note that sexual harassment encompasses any type of harassment on the basis of gender.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. Thank you. Okay, so based on the story of the woman that was on the telephone crying to her sister, her name was Martinez. Did her situation constitute sexual harassment?
Yes, it did.
Okay, and how do we know that?
Because it was, it fit the parameters. It was unwelcome sexual advances. It was requests for sexual things. It was verbal and physical contact. So it fit all of those. Sexual harassment falls into two categories. And so then breaking it down and trying to figure out which category it goes into, to me, it's quite simple. It goes into the hostile work environment. But it does definitely constitute sexual harassment.
Yeah. And then she mentions, though, that if she did anything about it, she'd be afraid of getting fired. So do you think that goes toward the quid pro quo? Is it quid pro quo?
Quo harassment?
No, it doesn't fall into quid pro quo, because that is typically stating if you don't give me this sexual favor, then this is going to happen to you. And what was communicated from what we know and the information that we know, and maybe more was said than what was just outside the conversation she had. Right. So in an investigation, you would be able to dig deeper and find that out. And possibly if something else took place that wasn't part of the conversation, then it could fall into the quid pro quo. But from the information that we have right now, no, it doesn't. Because the quid pro quo is basically saying, if you don't give me what I want sexually, then I'm going to retaliate against you in some form. And that was never said.
Yeah. That information wasn't given. She just felt that way. She felt that if she had said something. So then the fellow, what was his name? DeCosti? He calls for some counsel from the lawyer. What do you guys think about her advice? Do you guys remember the advice that was given to him about what he should do?
I do. I want to give someone else the opportunity to talk. I don't want to. But I do have a lot of opinions of this because obviously I deal with this day to day. So, but I definitely want to give other people a chance to give their opinions.
Sorry, I'm just looking back over because I read it a while back.
Yeah, on Lone Star, the third page about...
That's what I was looking right there, right? In a nutshell, so people always have positions. Is it where it says in a nutshell? Is that where we're looking?
Go up about three parts where it says that part's easy.
So that's probably required.
I do believe that he did the right thing by calling legal counsel. If he has an HR department, which it doesn't state that, then that would have been a better turn for him to go to. But he was just getting legal counsel within his own department, with his own company. It wasn't like it was outside counsel.
Right.
So because it was within his own company, then yes, he didn't do anything wrong by getting legal counsel from his legal department. Now, for their, what they felt he should do was also go to the EEO department within the company. And so that makes a big difference, whether it's within the company or external. And within the company, that's fine. He can reach out because it's still all in-house. However, if he has an HR department, then I would definitely say go to them first, and even management first before he actually opens up an EEO case, because they can basically get ahead of the game. They can resolve the issues because there wasn't any tangible things that happened. You know, she didn't actually get fired or she didn't actually get demoted yet. And so they can get ahead of the game right now if he went through HR or his management. But because it's all in-house, I don't think it's an issue to go to legal counsel in-house or EEO in-house.
Okay, so to finish this section, the last part is about liability. Do you think that lawyer had in her mind the liability of the company?
Yeah,
Yes,
I think every HR department does, or any company, corporate. HR is there to protect the company. Okay, that's your first priority. And not in a rude way, but HR isn't there to protect the employee alone. Its first priority is the company. The second priority is the employee. So, like, if you feel at risk, HR isn't always your best bet, right? It's where you're going to report your problems, but HR is your company protection. Okay. You know, that's why they form an HR department in reality, is to protect their company. It does help your employees, but HR is there to protect the company. So liability, they are concerned about their liability when anyone comes to them.
Okay. All right, part 2. Spencer, how would you evaluate, his name is DeCosti, right? His options at this point. What should he do? What do you think he should do?
Oh boy, I don't know. I'm trying to refresh myself on this because I read it such a long time ago. I don't know if it's just a thing of honesty, maybe. I don't know. I think that's a huge thing in general, being honest about a situation. But I feel like I'm not as prepared as I should be for tonight all of a sudden.
Oh, sorry to put you on the spot. So
no, you're totally fine. I deserve it.
So Julia, what are his options at this point? I mean, now that he's talked to a lawyer or a counselor.
Yeah, his options are actually extremely slim. So he has to do something.
Yeah.
That's a given. He cannot just sit on it. He cannot just talk with, what was her name? What was Martinez? Julia. Her name was Julia.
Oh my goodness.
So he can't just sit down and discuss it with her and think it's done, because it's not.
No.
As leadership, you now have a legal obligation to elevate it. So whether he now takes it to the HR department, or he discusses it with upper management to see what they can do once again to get ahead of the game and put out, training material and have everyone re-sign harassment things, the typical things that you do, to show, if ever does go to litigation, to show that the company was taking action upon it. But he has to do something. He can't just, sit there and not do anything now as management.
So let's take a vote. So Julia's vote is he needs to do something. Christy, what do you think?
He has to do something legally.
Yeah. And Spencer, what do you think?
So that's the only protection that he has at this point. So if any.
Yeah.
I think it's, the only protection he has legally for his job, and also, there's just a lot of liability to him personally if he doesn't too, for his own job.
Okay. So if you're Jack, how do you convince Martinez to go through that process? Because she was worried, she was crying about losing her job and about her husband finding out, because she thinks her husband would go crazy and be violent over it. So how to convince Julia now?
There is no convincing. At this point, there is no convincing. He's liable now because he heard and he knows. And so as a leader in the company, he has to advance it, whether she agrees or not. And then it would be turned over to the HR department or the EEO. And if she doesn't comply with them, at least he has done his due diligence as a leader and advanced it.
Yeah.
That's what I would say exactly.
Can't sit down and get her approval to move forward with it. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
There's
no approval to it, but I think in reality, what it does is it takes it off of his hands. He gets to advance it, and if she chooses not to talk to anyone because of her being scared of her job, she has every right to. She doesn't have to talk to anyone, but he's also covered the basis on his end for his protection of his job as well as the company's that he did advance it.
Yeah. And what she, what HR should talk to her about is it's not even, it's very helpful to have things in writing, but it's not a legal requirement that she had to document every day and every time. And, it's not a legal requirement for that. And so making sure that she understands that, and yes, there's no retaliation. Companies always have no retaliation policies. That everybody kind of rolls their eyes about that, but making sure that they reinforce that to her too.
Right, but you and I know in reality, there is no retaliation. Does not mean it doesn't happen. I've watched it happen in HR. I mean, that's where I'm at too in HR, and they can tell you 100 times they didn't do it to retaliate against them. But it happens, unfortunately. That's kind of a side effect of being human, unfortunately. How about that? You see it more than you don't, unfortunately, in the workplace.
Yeah. So in his situation, he needs to report it. And then as he goes in there to report it, I mean, the only thing he has is that he overheard her conversation. So
I think he's giving a legal right.
Start an investigation.
Yeah. Then the investigation would start, and it would be out of his hands.
He didn't overhear it from someone else. She overheard it from her, right? So it's not as hearsay as saying, I heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he does have I've heard it, I just think that would go a little farther, too, within HR. And then that's up to HR or whoever investigates what's going on, what they think of that. So.
Okay. All right. Part 3. We are going to practice policies and procedures. We are to assign each of us a role. We need a victim. We need a harasser, a bystander.
Sure, I'll be the victim.
Julia's the victim. And we need legal counsel. Okay. It's only
How many legal counsel?
It's only
Just one?
It's only fitting that Spencer is the harasser, right, Spencer? Sorry.
Why don't we have both reversed, you know?
I had to say it.
Oh, buddy.
Oh, no. Now I'm guilty of harassing you.
Yeah, I feel harassed.
Oh, no.
Legal counsel.
I'm so sorry. Okay, so who wants to be who? Julia's the victim.
Yeah, I took the easiest one and said it not easiest is because I'm the one who is going to have a nervous breakdown, but easiest because if we're talking about policy, I can tell you what I'd like to see in the policy as a victim.
Okay, good.
But I don't have to go deep into the legal counsel. That's the hardest one of what you want to see in a policy.
Okay. Christy, do you want to be the legal counsel then? Did we lose Christy? Her picture's paused.
I don't know. She looks
Can you
frozen.
see me?
Oh, there you are.
Oh, she's back.
Sorry, my sister's connection's not awesome here. I'm upstairs in the baby room.
Will you be legal counsel, Christy?
Yeah.
Okay. Harasser or bystander, Spencer?
I guess I'll be the harasser, but I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing.
Okay, let me read on. Given your role, identify the most important things you want to see in the new policy and procedures that your organization is formulating to govern sexual harassment issues. Be prepared to defend your choices as other people may not agree with them. Okay, let's see. We are... what to include in a company's sexual harassment policy. So we're kind of taking the side of each role and as the side of each role kind of putting together our own policy.
Okay. So as the victim, what I would like to see in the policy is obviously the no retaliation, and that being something that's true that the company really does stand by. So a no retaliation, I'd like to see that in the policy. Some type of protection against, some type of protection for me. Something that's in there, and I'll let legal counsel go into detail, but some type of protection for myself and my job and my potential promotions.
All right, it's my turn?
Yeah.
Okay. So there definitely has to be, the legal counsel side is that, of course, that the biggest thing is that they're protecting the company. And so we need to make sure that there's definitely some pamphlets handed out, sexual harassment forms re-signed out, and a seminar reset up in the building, right? Because if we know there's something occurring already in that workplace, we need to hold a whole new harassment workshop for the sexual harassment workshop for the employees of everyone required, from low management to upper management, every employee in the building. And then again, to protect our side, like Julia just mentioned, is we need to have some kind of no retaliation so that she doesn't come back and try to sue us for a sexual harassment claim, because quite often they're going to get fired. Someone might be fired and they're going to assume it's because of that, even if they had poor work environment or not, possibly in another environment like 2 years down the road. I've seen it happen before when they're like, well, I filed this claim as a hostile work environment 2 years ago and everything's changed. So you got to make sure that we're covering all bases of the avenues to protect the company, as well as make sure all upper management is aware of what's going on. In the right form of fashion. There's only so much detail you can give out, but making sure that we are not doing things wrong in the company. And going back over our policies is huge. So
yeah, and as a bystander, I think that I don't know. The thing in my mind that keeps going over and over is kind of that privacy of, okay, either saw it happen or I overheard that someone that it had happened to, and kind of having that privacy for that bystander that really isn't involved, but they still, as an employee or a manager, has that you're required to report it. So to keep that private, I don't know, is that part of a policy of, I'm just barely back in the workforce after 17 years of being a stay-at-home mom, so all of this is new to me.
The privacy is important, but you don't have to hold the privacy as much as the employer does. You can still go talk to HR. That's very different than, say, me as a manager releasing your information to an employee under me. Or, there's of course a way the management's set up and who can have what information in your companies and what's necessary to be released, of course, to each company person.
So maybe as a bystander, then having that open door policy, that good communication to be able to go and talk about it, to report it.
I think it'd be critical for you guys to know as a company, like I know in our company, our HR is not I'm on site, but really the firm that does most of my work is off site. So knowing who to contact in your company, who is your HR rep, what they're there for, how you go about, and what the protocol is to reporting things.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, harasser, do you have your mic's off? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I've been thinking it's hard because I want to be like harsh and say if you harass, like you're gone. I'm trying to think of things like in the perspective of a harasser, what protections do I want? But it's hard because I'm never going to be one, so it's hard to put myself in that shoes.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I think it's. I was thinking longevity of like career post offense, whether with the same company or elsewhere. I think it should. I don't know, because I believe people can change their ways. So I'm thinking it shouldn't, or there's got to be some protection, but I don't even know if that can be controlled outside of the company. Some protection where it will not hinder you finding employment elsewhere if you're terminated from your current place. But at the same time, I'm like, if you've got that problem, then what are you doing? I don't know. I'm conflicted here.
No, I think you're right in the right avenue there of having in the policy some type of protection of privacy for you as the harasser. You need some privacy protection as well. It is a confidential issue, and it shouldn't be something that's discussed outside the privy groups, the people who privy information. And so making sure the policy has some type of protection there to protect your confidentiality. And possibly something in there as well that what our general counsel was alluding to with making sure that you have a true understanding of what harassment is, the training and things like that. Is there something in place? Because, maybe you come from a culture where that really would not have been considered harassment. And so maybe something there that teaches you as a better understanding of what harassment is.
We come from different backgrounds in our district where I put, and we quite often before we terminate someone, we move them positions to a different department to see if by chance it was a mix of personalities, right? Because sometimes the harassment isn't clear cut. It could be possibly different cultures. Like one person finds that very offensive where the other one doesn't. Yeah. And so quite often we have, in no way has it ever backfired on us to move them. And there are some definitely that are, offensive HR needs that we have to meet with termination. And some are just, that's not a good fit. Those two people shouldn't be in the same department, possibly. They need to be in separate departments to make a quality team. So.
Okay. So what we've just discussed as each of our roles, we're supposed to take that as a whole and apply it to, let's just do specifically the Lone Star case as far as each of that. And let's see. try kind of what would be then the procedure and the policies for Martinez and DeCosti. Is that his name?
Yep.
Okay. So enforcing those things, then the harasser would have his privacy still, but what would the legal counsel be for him then once he's accused and the investigation starts? How would these policies be put into action?
I think your first move quite often is to move them out of the dynamic. Like, quite often in our department, we move them to a new area temporarily until we figure out what the harassment claim was so that everyone's protected. It's a liability part. It eliminates some of our liability as a company, right? Or as our school district, so that we don't have the harassment continue until we can get a final investigation of what's going on. Quite sometimes with this case, I probably would have given him a mandatory leave until he could investigate what was going on. It does protect your person who's accusing him in a safe and dynamic from us so that we don't get sued. It's really about the liability of the company not getting sued in the end in a case. And also, we want to make sure it's a safe work environment for them.
Yeah.
So that would be my recommendation. I probably would have required a mandatory leave while we investigated the full case.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Julia, Spencer? Enforcing the things we talked about for this case?
I think for poor Spencer, our harasser, keeping in mind that even the harasser has legal rights as well. So you want to tread lightly anytime that there's, suspension or anything involved in that, the harasser also has legal rights and there's legal ramifications around that too. But, as the victim, just reassuring, the company reassuring me that, that I'm not doing anything wrong by coming out and discussing, coming out with the harassment.
Okay.
I think a way to get around you're right, the harasser has rights too in every way. You can offer, we've quite often in our company, we've had a very, very touchy issue like this. Like, we don't know the whole sides, right? It's hearsay or vice versa. We required a mandatory leave, but we paid the leave until things were worked out. So that way the accuser is still safe. The harasser's off-site until we can figure it out, but they're not losing any pay from being off-site either at that point. So they're still receiving their paycheck until they're proven that there's actually something wrong, because it's not fair to the harasser either if it truly isn't the case and he's been off work for 2 weeks and no pay, right?
Yeah.
You can't require someone to take no pay without some kind of option. So I know we've done that before. One time it turned out that they really harassed, the other time it wasn't, and with that it ended well because they more or less had some time. They got paid while they were gone. There's never a pretty case either way. How's that?
Oh, yeah.
It's hard.
I'm curious what the percentage is of it actually being harassment versus not in hearsay. It's got to be so hard to determine.
It's very hard, but
Yeah.
Yeah. And then how many people don't report when it
Yeah.
well, sometimes we take it as if it's happened more than once, right? Too. The first time they're going to get a reprimand of some sort, and then have they had other cases, or have we had emails or conversations with the same employee before causing other problems with other employees in a less aggressive manner, but possibly already had conversations with us about him?
Okay. All right. Oh, there's the new baby. I have to remember we're recording. Okay, part 4. All right, this is the grand finale, the conclusion. I'm supposed to tell you guys what happened with the case. I don't know if any of you have read this yet. Okay, When Jack called corporate counsel, he forgot about caller ID. The lawyer used the information he gave her to figure out the people he was talking about. She contacted the Lone Star EEO, which launched a formal investigation. The EEO tried hard to get Martinez to cooperate. French denied all charges, claiming that Martinez had made up her story to protect herself from pending layoffs. DeCoste was asked for evidence, but he didn't have any. Julia Martinez's husband found out what was going on, beat Julia up, and forced her to quit.
Whoa.
French survived the
Yikes.
investigation with only a bruised reputation. He blamed everything on DeCoste for calling corporate counsel. There was so much animosity between DeCoste and French that DeCoste left the company after 3 months. Whoa. I don't know if any of you read that, but darn it. Okay.
Crazy.
All right, just a couple more questions. Let's see. In the case, what was Lone Star's sexual harassment policy? Policy was...
Hold on.
I had it on here.
I was just looking at that one. Hold on.
Did they have a sexual harassment
I don't
policy?
think so. I don't remember reading it. Do you guys remember reading it?
No, I don't think it
But I'm
specifies.
not sure there was one. I don't think there was one specified. I think the mistake that was made in the whole process, even because I read this afternoon, this end part, right? And I hadn't remembered the first part. I think what was wrong is there should have never been a call in. I think there's a way to reach out to HR before you make an actual opening of a case. Because again, yes, that does matter. Caller ID, emails, I will reach out and find out who it is to protect the company. Because just like we said, the goal is to protect that company. But I think there's a way to have made a claim to the company about harassment without probably doing what he did that brought up so much problems for her personally.
Okay.
I think that legal counsel can be held liable to some of this as well.
Absolutely.
The legal counsel does not mean they know the best and does not mean they can't be held liable for the turnout. I think that they went about it the wrong way when they went around DaCosta and went straight to the EEO without trying to figure out what they could do in place of.
And I think when she was unwilling to say anything, the company at that point, liability should have stopped. They had already protected themselves in every liability way. And as a company, they should have been courteous of their employee and shut that down right then and there. Because you've also crossed the line at that point for your employee. She now has a harassment case against what they're doing to her because she's asked them to not look into it anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
at that point, they should have just moved forward with the training and the things that Chrissy had talked about.
Yeah.
All you could do at that point.
Covers themselves when the company says, okay, but we did our due diligence and we went ahead with new training. We went ahead, and when it goes into litigation, they can see that the company did everything that they could to retrain all of their leaders and all
Absolutely.
of their... Yeah. And so they could have done that and not had it turn out this way.
Especially when she had some, as you could tell, reading the article, it did allude to that she had an abusive husband. She was worried.
Yeah.
But we didn't allude to that specific huge problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can see where now that we got to the end, how severe that was for her. The company opened themselves up to even bigger liability when they took it so far, So,
yeah.
So can we unanimously agree that if this company had clear policies and procedures, it would have helped this case?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? Most companies, and this is just kind of on a side note, when DaCosta found out how afraid of her husband that she was, not that he should have cried anymore, but most companies have counsels and aids for abusive situations where you can send them to counseling.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of free things available to team members that could potentially be in abusive situations. And so seeing if they had something like that to pass on the information to her, that's just a side note, but
right, and we hold, in our school district, we hold something like that, just like, hey, here's your options, and like, in our days leading up to school, one of our whole days is an HR day of like, hey, here's your options for if you're in an abusive situation, getting that information out there in a very casual way so that if someone really is in that situation, they don't feel like they have to go find it, right?
Yeah.
You want it readily available to these people who are in that situation, because those people in situations like that aren't looking for it because they're scared to look for it. So you as a company have a liability to make sure that it's out there for everybody to see it and find it and how to get help. And I think if there had been a clear, like in our company, we have an anonymous drop email in our company that we don't check the trace emails. It's part of the agreement. And so they can drop an email saying if they have a claim of harassment or something and they don't want to put their name to it, at least I have it on record. Okay, someone is feeling harassed by this person. So if I get 3 or 4 dings from them, I'm going to probably look into it, right? A little bit than I am if it was that person doing anything in our company. And that way, I mean, you get a sense of, it's kind of like your Dropbox. Leave your baggage at the door, drop what you need to talk to us about without being threatened by your job or anyone knowing who you are, kind of thing. So.
Okay, I'm supposed to ask.
The negatives is sometimes you get everybody's problems in the box. You're like, okay, that was petty, but okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Some people just need to vent.
Yeah.
Okay, each of you need to identify the most important thing you learned from this case. One important thing.
I think for me, it's the importance of being blatantly clear on your policies and making sure everyone's aware of what they are. Because that just dispels myths.
Yeah, I think policies were big for me.
Sure.
But I think what I really realized as a reminder to people and all of us is that the company's first priority is liability, and we need to remember that sometimes when we're in the workforce too, is that you need to make sure you've got your details there, right? Because, again, I think so many people forget that the legal counsel in the company is not for you as much as for them. And if you need to have your own type of legal counsel sometimes in these situations. But, I mean, I'm coming from an HR standpoint where sometimes you have to understand that the company, I'm there to protect the company, right? I'm not saying I'm not going to protect you, but first priority is the company that I work for.
Okay, I'm supposed to ask each of you overall the quality of today's discussion from a 0 to a 10.
A 10, obviously.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. It was a 10. I think we got a lot out of today.
Good. Let's see.
I think everyone did. It was very, informative to all of us. There was a lot of potential in the discussion to learn. So.
I don't remember this part being on the other leaders, but it says I'm supposed to ask you 3, what did you like about me being a leader today?
That wasn't on the other one.
Really?
Interesting.
It's funny.
I thought you came really prepared. It was great to fill in the gaps for us. I think that sometimes we all read it early in the week, and you were really ready for the discussion.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Seriously.
Thanks.
I like how you truly led the discussion and you guided us along each question. So it kind of flowed.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
And then what could I do better next time? Some criticism here. Or positive.
Yeah, I'd say bring treats, but that's going to be kind of hard through.
Bring treats.
Can we make it short and sweet? I'm
That's
just
what I'm
kidding,
thinking.
right? No, I don't think there's a whole lot. I think you did a really good job. I think you kept it at a great pace, which we're right under an hour, which I think is pretty impressive for right where we're at.
Yeah. Good. When I looked through this, I thought, oh goodness, I hope we get under an hour. But we're right
Right?
at 39, almost 40 minutes. My recording.
Perfect.
Okay. Anything else? I'll stop
So
recording.
So just for clarity purposes, was someone going to reach out to